Hey, you guys. Should be up here. Let's check and see if the stream is live yet. Hey, so today we're going to jump into some macro setup over in OpenBuilds, and I'll also show you a flag project in Easel and how we can integrate some different logos onto the flag. Um, yeah, so I'm going to jump over to OpenBuilds and kind of go over that with you real quick. Let me finish setting up all these screens and make sure the chat is working. Can you guys hear me okay? Sometimes the chat pop-ups aren't configured right to begin with, even though I try and go through the process beforehand. It seems to love giving me troubles with that one. Oh, I'm not even sure if we're live right now. Let's see. It's showing me a problem over there with the chat stuff. Oh, it looks okay. It's coming up now. There we go. That should be all right. Let me know. Can you guys hear me okay? We need some music over here, right? I need to get some music in the shop for you guys. Some non-copyrighted music. Anyway, if we're up, let me know in the chat. Now I'll see if we can get the comments to pop up on the screen again. That was working pretty well last time. Oh, maybe it's this other one. That could be the problem. Somehow I managed to start 2 live streams at the same time. Hopefully I'm on the right one with you guys. All right, so I'm gonna finish pulling up the macro stuff and get ready to drop the links to those in the chat for you guys and in the comments section of the video. All right. I think we're there. Hopefully. All right, let me switch cameras real quick. I think it's that one. There we go. Oh yeah, I got a couple hellos here. There we go. The chat is working now. Let's see if we can get it up on the screen too. No matter how many times I try and set this up before the stream, it gives me a different link to use once the stream starts. I figured out this other. So the other guys that are doing these streams on YouTube are starting it like way beforehand, pulling these links while they leave you on a different screen, right? Like a Be Right Back screen or something like that. Maybe I got to start doing that instead. Anyway, so let's jump over here into OpenBuilds. So in order to set up macros, we're going over here to this tab that's called Macros. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced this when you go to open OpenBuilds and we end up with, you click the icon for OpenBuilds in your start menu or whatever, and it doesn't open. Well, it opens, but it's actually down over here in the taskbar. And you could either click that icon again to open it, click your G code to open it again, right? or come right over here and open it by clicking Open User Interface GUI, right? And then it's going to pop up with this pop-up. Well, there is a macro that you can add to run that. Let me see if I can grab that real quick. And we'll set up the macro to auto load that up. I'm going to drop in the chat really quick this. Oh, my voice is muted. That's not good. Is it muted? Hopefully it's not. Is your voice muted? It shouldn't be. Let me know. Can you hear me now? I know sometimes there's a little bit of a delay there too between when I talk and when you guys actually hear me. Let's see if I can improve that. Oh, no, I can't. I'm showing audio on my end. Well, the audio is just really low. That's weird. I could show you what the audio looks like on mine. It's like maxing out. If I talk much louder, it's gonna probably be be way too loud on the screen. Anyway. Oh, there we go. Fix that problem. All right. That should work now with the pop-up. Let's do this. There we go. There's some text. So I added a link to the chat right there that I'm going to pin to the top real quick, and that's the OpenBuilds forum page where they talk about adding JavaScript macros and kind of how you can set up your own using JavaScript itself. You don't have to use JavaScript for these, but you can do some really cool macros with those if you do get into JavaScript or know anybody at all that does that. And there are some pre-made ones that are on that forum page as well. I'm going to jump over here to another one too and share another macro page from their forum, which has another sample, but it's not on that main page. But this one's a pretty good one as well. So that main page one, here, I'll just pull over this tab and we'll talk about it real quick on the screen. As you open up this page here with the OpenBuilds forum group, if you are using OpenBuilds and you haven't checked out their forum, it's a great place to post your questions in addition to their Facebook page. This guy, Peter Vanderwalt, I don't think he's on their Facebook page, but he is over here and really active on that forum group, handling a lot of problems like every single day, multiple times throughout the day. But we've got some different functions here setting up those macros. Is this the right link that I provided for you guys? Oh yeah, so here's how to probe the center. And what that does is that allows you to basically measure the board itself using the jog commands, and then it identifies where center is just by measuring from edge to edge, top to bottom of the workpiece. Okay, so you could do something like that to find the center point of a circle as well, instead of having to use geometry to kind of measure and mark it out. And then this is one where they created it kind of goes through time here, right? They created a macro for Z probing, but then they added that macro onto the toolbar. Or actually, no, so that's the macro for probing the Z, which is, yeah, it's now on the toolbar. Anyway, and then this one's pretty neat, which some of you that transition from UGS over to OpenBuilds, I think would like, which is how to show or hide the Z jog buttons based on your step size. So if you choose a large step size, it'll auto hide your Z jog buttons, so you won't accidentally have it at 100 millimeters step size and jog down into your wasteboard or up and start losing steps. So I know that one is one that I found relatively recently. Earlier this week, I found that one, and I need to forward that to a few friends who are reluctant to transfer over to OpenBuilds from UGS because of that feature period where they can set X and Y versus Z jogging distances separate from each other because they don't like the potential of crashing. Let me pull this up. Let me just make sure the audio is good. I'm going to check it on my end real fast here. Let's just see. Yeah, it's showing audio on my phone. All right. So, um, yeah, and then this whole thread talks about different updates to those as well, right? So once you implement them, they did make some changes further down. So make sure you kind of scroll through the whole um, this whole thread post and try and grab like the most recent version of some of those because you'll find different features. Like this one here, if you were to use keyboard shortcuts to jump between these using the original macro they set up, it 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 would only work by clicking the radio buttons for your jog amounts and clicking using the keyboard shortcuts set up to click in between them, and it wouldn't work right. So they went ahead and updated that. There's a handful of good ones in here, right? Again, this is another one measuring stock by using the continuous jog function and jogging around like that, and then it's gonna output how far you jogged in a different pop-up window, right? There's a macro here. It's called the saw stop macro, and the way it works is it's kind of like how the way the saw stop works. Um, if you hit material that is conductive, it basically stops, but it has to be kind of grounded as well. So it may or may not work with human flesh. It all depends on how well you're grounded. Whereas on the saw stop, it's kind of using the table itself as the ground, but not all CNCs have a metal bed. So that only kind of works in certain instances, this saw stop macro. But it's a neat little feature, right? Where you can say like your CNC operates like a saw stop. This macro here, they went ahead and implemented into the software itself natively. This used to cut off and yeah, basically cut off the text, and it would be more difficult to see what the actual COM port is for certain elongated COM port identifiers like this one here. But that's standard now. It's already built in, so there's no reason to use this. I think they even probably took it down, the actual pre-made macros. And then this right here, setting work 0 via keyboard shortcuts, allows you can set the different zeros, right? Whether you want to set X, Y, or you can set it up to probe Z by pressing keyboard shortcuts. Which the good part about having keyboard shortcuts for these functions, you could then map that to a game controller. We'll have to go through that in a future video, the game controller setup, and I will show you guys how to set one of those up. But in order to set up a game controller in OpenBuilds, what you're really going to do is set up that game controller through Windows and as a standard Xbox game controller, right? And then through that, you'll be able to map the regular keyboard shortcuts to it. Because when you set up a game controller in Windows, you basically get to map the keys how you want them to work. So you can usually it's default mapped that like the arrows are up, down, left, right, and that sort of stuff. But you can also have it mapped to any series of other functions, whether it be like multi-key shortcuts, that sort of stuff. You can map them that way. All right. So by setting up these one button X and Y and then probing functions via a macro, you can have that work as well with the that guy. And this right here talks about probing with, again, this is kind of what I mentioned a second ago. And this is how to set up the probe that way too, right, with keyboard shortcuts. If you do click these links over here, it takes you to another page where they actually you can copy and paste the contents of the setup that they've gone ahead and made already, right? And then this one here is pretty neat, controlling the jog step size. So the default step sizes here are under inch mode, you get 0.001, 0.01, 0.1, and 1 inch jogging. But if you want to jog, if you want to get rid of this tiny one, or if you want to get rid of any one of these that you want to get rid of, right? And use a 10-inch one instead, you could do that, or 20 inches, or whatever distance you want to jog, you can set it up that way. All right. So that is what you would do with that other macro. So I'm going to go ahead over here and And then, sorry, this is what I started with at the beginning of this live stream as well, was automatically launch at the startup. So this is the macro for that. And basically what it does is as soon as OpenBuilds comes up, it essentially tells it to open the user interface that first time that you open it, instead of having to open it once and then again. So normally when I open OpenBuilds, I just go in here and either find it in these ones here, or we can just type in the words open and it pops up in mine. Oops. Trying to see this keyboard around the mic is fun. So we got OpenBuilds control, and I would just click this once and wait a minute or so and then do it again. But the other option is click it once, come down here and open it by clicking this button or the icon. Or if you set up this macro, it launches automatically at startup. So I'm going to set that one up real quick. We pull up OpenBuilds. Don't mind my desktop there if you saw that real quick, because yeah, it's just really full of stuff and busy. All right. So really, we've got. I went over to that that other page where when you click on the link and it takes you to, when you click on this link, right, and it takes you here, and then by scrolling down to the start control and full screen mode, and we just have to copy this macro right here and set that up by clicking add macro, and we'll paste that in here. Somebody else in a I want to say the Fox Alien or SaintSmart group this morning asked me about how to adjust the lift height after probing in OpenBuilds. And using the default probe wizard, you can't do that. But you can set up a macro for probing, and then you have the ability to do that. So if you do want to see how to set up a macro for probing, James Dean Designs has a video on how he does that for Candle. And all you got to do is steal that same macro and pop it in here. I might have to borrow his code and obviously give him credit, but throw it on a blog post. That way it's easier to copy and paste over, and then share that with you guys as well in the community tab of this channel. So if you guys are here watching this, you'll probably see that in your home screen soon enough. And I'll let you guys know once I get a handful of those blogs set up with these different macros already in there. So we've gone ahead and I've copied over the G code from that, and we have to click on JavaScript for this one because of the way it sets up. Oops. Let me make sure here. We want to get rid of that G code one. Sorry. Have to click JavaScript first. Drop this in here if it's a JavaScript style macro. So you can do raw G code ones where you can basically, that's some of the other ones like probing and stuff. Those are going to be through the G code ones. But if you do use those links from these ones, it does really specify how to set those up. So for this one here, I'm just going to call this open by, or full screen. Yeah, let's go full screen. All right, OpenBuilds full screen. All right. You can change the color of the icon, and that's going to be the way, we'll pick one over here. Green, sure. And then we can give this a keyboard shortcut if you wanted to. It doesn't actually need one. And then we click apply. We get a new macro button over here, which is the OpenBuilds full screen. Now you could, since this one here is really going to just run in the background, and you're not going to actually ever need to click this button, you could make this obviously one of those other colors. And in order to do that, you can click the gear icon right here. I don't know how well you can see that. Oh, let's go ahead and open my zooming app real quick. There we go. Control 1. All right. So right here, we've got this gear icon. Hopefully you guys can see that if you're watching this on like a cell phone or something. It's pretty small. But on the top of each of these, we got this gear icon here, right? And you can click that gear icon, and then we get into edit mode. So I'm going to click it real quick. And we get into edit macro mode. So you can go through and you can make changes to it. or you can delete the entire macro if you decided that you set it up entirely wrong and you want to start all over. You can just delete it right there. Or you can go ahead and change the colors of these. We'll go with light blue. I'm sorry, I forgot to click a step here. We need to also select this run on startup, so basically when OpenBuilds opens, this is telling it jump right into that full screen mode. So make sure you read all the steps because I forgot to click on that one. All right. And then we're good to go. You can actually change the icons that appear here as well. Ooh, now I forgot to do that. Oh yeah, icon right here. Right at the top. I have some of these saved on a different Windows login. So yeah, you can pick any one of these icons you want here. And that's going to be what appears next to it here on the side, right? So this one here, I've set up a G30. You can also set up, I think I've discussed this in a different one if you haven't seen that. It's not going to let me click here right now because I don't have a CNC plugged into my computer. But if you click on this, you can set up the G28, G30 commands. I go over that in a different live stream that we did a few weeks ago. Is there a solution for, so Chris asked, is there a solution for diagonal jogging? I guess you could build your own macros that move it a certain amount in X and Y, and then potentially jog with those instead. But I think what maybe you're talking about, if like you want additional buttons over here to jog at a straight diagonal direction, that's not really built in. You could build a macro that does add buttons in here, I guess, and kind of changes the layout. I think you can add the buttons in there, or you can have a different jog controller kind of pop up to get those controls, or you can have the macro itself, like I said, jog in X and Y by clicking a macro button and just kind of lay them out down here in a way that makes more sense too. But yeah, so then we've gone ahead and set up the OpenBuilds full screen. So I was to close out OpenBuilds and in the task, and then click that icon one time now, it's going to pop right up instead of waiting for that sort of stuff, right? There's another macro in there that talks about you click the one button instead of having to click File Open, and then this little one here for the G code, because I can't tell you how many times I've come in here, selected the File Open, and as I click while I'm moving the mouse, and I get OpenBuilds Cam instead, and then I got to wait for that to load up. But yeah, that you can set up a macro where it automatically opens into those folders. Let's see if I can find that one real quick, and I'll set that one up again real quick for you. I don't know if you can see this, but I actually, ooh, it's just barely behind my head there. I actually just finished building a new PC over there that I'm kind of copying over a lot of the stuff from this laptop over to that PC to give me those same capabilities, you know? But I had to move it right now because it was in the way for this streaming stuff. So that'd be pretty neat. The upload speed is a lot faster, so hopefully there's a lot less latency with doing this, because operating via this laptop, that's one of the limitations I have. And the ridiculous graphics card on it is going to allow me to kind of render it 3D and maybe get into Fusion 360 while streaming without having a bunch of lagging occurring. Because I tried that before and it lagged out pretty bad. Anyway, let's come over in here and I'll see if I can pull up that other one. Let's see if I can find this real quick. I've got too many tabs open with all these on them. All right. Oh, so here's one that we can kind of go into. Let me drop another link in the chat real quick, and So this one here, this is a link I just dropped in there, which is the parking macro, right? So that kind of allows you to define a position based off of home of where you want the machine to park at when you click this button. So instead of, let's say you do your carve starting from the front left position, your machine homes to the front left. Sorry, let me start over. So your machine homes to the front left, you then set X and Y zeros to that front left too, maybe. I usually prefer center, but regardless of where you set X and Y zeros, you run your carve, and if you're using something like Easel, it ends and it goes back to that 0, 0 position. And if you want it to then park somewhere else, you could set up this macro that allows it to move back into the corner, basically, or wherever you want it to go, right? So this is a macro for moving back and yeah, so we need to set up the G53 and then your positioning like that, right? And you can set it so it raises up the Z as well, close to that home position, or you can leave it where the Z is at when it finishes the carve, and then just park that way. Let's see if I can find this one real quick. Usually there's a section on the on that one real quick. All right. And of course, when you do set these up, pay attention to whether you're using inches or millimeters for some of these values, which is, let me talk about that real quick. Over here in this macro setup for the parking, right? Moving it to the corner at the click of a button, which kind of, but this is basically the same sort of thing that you would do for setting up your diagonal jogs, right? You could set up a macro to move it back and to the right at the same time, or back and to the left at the same time, front and to the right and front and to the left by clicking one button, and it will perform that diagonal move at once. And you can set it up so you can move incrementally, and then you've got that part that you were asking for. I think that was Chris. Yeah. Or you could set it up using machine positioning, which allows you to then set up a parking position that's more permanently defined and not incremental from where the machine currently sits. What's interesting about using the park command in Easel is it's based off of where the X and Y 0 was set for the work position. So it does take into account the max position of your machine, and it will say, oh, you can't jog that far back because you started too far from the front left corner for some machines. And their parking movements in Easel are predefined, 600 millimeters. So if your machine doesn't go back that far, then you can't even use the parking function within Easel. So by using this, setting up this command here, he's using these ones, and I always forget which one that is real quick. Yeah. So he's using these ones here in his, right? G20, which sets it to inches. So let me pull this over real quick. G20 and G21. So basically G20, when you see that, that's inch mode. And G21 is millimeters or metric, right? Without the pop-ups. Let's see if I can find that defined in here better. Yeah. Oh, there's got to be a line to that. But anyway, you can look up G21 versus G20 and find some more information about that. But it's basically G20 is inch mode and G21 is millimeters. So if you want to set up your parking to move back and to the right for this example, in inches, you would use G20. If you want to use millimeter values in here, then you would need to set this to G21 instead, all right? So since I typically use metric when I'm jogging, it doesn't really matter which way you set it up, as long as you're aware when you do set up this macro. And since these aren't like these are running at the click of a button and you're controlling the machine, this is a G code macro, right? So I'm going to go ahead and change this to G21 for metric, and we're going to move it 300 millimeters back and to the right. So you could test this out by jogging to home the machine and then jog it to a position and say, oh, that's where I want it to park at. And by jogging it from there, you would have the coordinates up here showing for what you would want to bring in here to get that position, right? So you'd home it, set X and Y zeros over here, and then jog it to where you want it to park at, and then pull those numerical values that are showing here and put them in these spots. Currently, I've got it set to inch mode, so you'd have to keep that in mind, which mode you're in when you pull those numbers to set it in here, right? Does that make sense, you guys? Let me know. Let me know if I've lost anybody yet on that part. Hey, Dan, what's up? How you doing? Nice to see you guys here. All of you hanging out with me today on a lovely Friday. So for this one, we've got park rear right. So this will work well enough on like the Master Tour Pro, the Fox Alien Master Tour Pro or Master Tour or 4040. What else? So many of the machines are 40. We could come over here and set this to like, I don't know, 385 by 385, and that would then park it in the rear right corner. And then it's going to do a diagonal movement, just like Chris was talking about. It's not going to go back and then to the right, because this is all on one line. It performs this at one time, right? So because we're using G53 here, that puts it into, oh, and those are supposed to be on a single line together. So that was an issue with the way the person wrote this up in the forum post. Is that these need to be on a line together like that if we're going to use absolute coordinates. Oh, it looks like my stream settings might be causing buffering on you guys' video. Let me try to update that real quick. Let me know. Is it lagging a lot for you guys? It looks okay. All right. Hopefully that's working out. All right, so it wants me to reduce my streaming quality real quick, and then hopefully that'll work better. All right, so hopefully it's not lagging, and if it is, it should get better in a minute or so. All right, so once we set it up like this, like I've got here, which if you read through that that whole post on that page, it does walk you through that, right? Yeah, so the next where you copy and paste the thread here from, the next section talks about how it needs to be one line. And that's, like I said, Peter's always on there helping people out. Yeah, and the other thing is setting it to Z0 will actually activate the home switch. So this actually needs to be a little bit less than that. So we'll do like -5 or -10 will be that much down below the home switch. If you don't want the Z to move at all after the carve and just XY for parking, you could delete this line out, and then you've got just that absolute diagonal jog coordinates from the front left to the, or from wherever it's sitting at on the machine to that coordinate, 385 by 385. So even if it was back near the right when it stopped, and you hit this macro, it's going to only move it a little bit to get to that position. It's not going to crash it. So that's kind of the neat part about using absolute coordinates and actually homing your machine. So some of these machines, the big one I have back there, I got used to operating a 3018 with no limit switches. So I've got limit switches on it. They're not even wired up. But on the smaller machines, especially the ones that were sent to me to try out, I typically leave the limit switches on them and actually do homing. So having this set up for that machine would be would work out pretty well. So for this, I'm going to specify that this is for the 4040 size machines, the Master Tour and Master Tour Pro, and that way I don't accidentally use this with the other machine. And that's kind of where setting these colors as well and the different icons might help you identify what macros are for which machine. All right. And then you can set this up with keyboard shortcuts, like if you press, I don't know, Shift P. It's going to, then when you press Shift and P on your keyboard, it's going to perform this function. So, yeah, there's just some things to think about there, right? You can set up your own keyboard shortcuts right within here to perform that macro movement. And then you've got a preview of what that shortcut is right here on the bottom of the button. And it's not going to run because there's no CNC machine hooked up. All right. So there's a couple of those. Let me see about everything else real quick here. Yeah, I guess we can go through the other one of the pop-up for, having the Z hide when you select the larger jog amount. And then it's going to hide these buttons. That's a good one to hook up if you're worried about crashing it, right? If you oftentimes click these buttons on accident and end up crashing your Z into it. Hopefully you've got a limit switch there, or you've set up your soft limits to do that automatically. But anyway, we've gone through setting up a few of those. This other one here, I've got go to lfence, which is that's just another G28 command. So instead of clicking two buttons here, because you actually have to click this little caret one to expand it, and then click G28 for it to move there. And they're all kind of in a row together, kind of like how I mentioned these ones here are easy to click the wrong thing. You could click the G30 instead of G28 because they're kind of close together in there. So by having these larger buttons here and the option to set up keyboard shortcuts, you can set it up that way. And like I mentioned, you can even set those up to run off of your gaming controller, or you can set up. Let me show you this real quick. So what I've bought and recently been using for streaming is this device called a Stream Deck, which is a macro. And this is kind of a higher end one because it has a little lights on there and icons directly on here. But you can set up your keyboard shortcuts to actually be performed on this device that you would just push a button for. So if you are doing video editing, this comes in handy. So instead of using the keyboard shortcuts on the actual keyboard to do things, I've got a profile set up in here that allows me to edit video. And then you can set up a lot of these different macro functions in the keyboard shortcuts to be performed with these additional buttons if you didn't have enough buttons on your gaming controller to do all these functions you've set up. So there's a neat additional kind of feature there. You can even get a lower end ones that are just basically a 10-digit keyboard for like the numerical buttons usually, and assign those to these different tasks because a lot of those are programmable as well as macros. And yeah, that's just another neat way of controlling the macros if you're setting up a gaming controller and it doesn't have enough buttons to do all these features. All right. Let's see, what else do we have here? All right, we can go over and I guess we can jump over into Easel real quick and set up the flag that I was going to do. Let's go ahead and yeah, let me grab that real quick here, this Easel one. It's going to force me to sign in real quick. All right. Let me open my default flag. All right, so let me jump back over there real quick. So here I'm going to set up this flag in Easel. I don't know if you guys have been experiencing this, but the previews tend to give me problems, especially if I opened this project on a different computer and then came back over to this one. So what I usually end up doing is just clicking through the different previews, and then it shows them on the thumbnails down here. And since we're over here and we're kind of going through some tips, I want to show you one thing that happens a lot. So that I often see in these different groups that people share, right? And then they say that they're having problems with their machine crashing and stuff like that, right? So sometimes people import an SVG or a DXF to Easel and something happens, like they end up with this little tiny speck somewhere off in the distance. But it's so small that when you open the project, you don't see it. If you see how the thumbnail looks here, how zoomed out and offset to one side it is, that tells me there's something up in that top right-hand corner causing this the thumbnail to be zoomed out like this, right? When you compare these two here. So ideally, the thumbnail is just going to show where your design is. So if it's zoomed out that far, then you've got something in your design. When I zoom in on my screen here, I can actually kind of see it, but because I didn't make the spec small enough to really hide it. So if you do experience that, just since we're here anyway, I figured I'd share that tip with you guys, that you could press Control A to select all, and you notice that the lines here, oh wait, those lines extend past the outside. There must be something else selected. And the way the thumbnail looks, right? So we start zooming out. And in case you guys didn't notice, I'm using Control and the scroll wheel on my mouse to zoom in and out. So I'm pressing the Control button on my keyboard and then scrolling in and out like this. And that's just another trick to being able to manipulate Easel faster. If you're using a touchpad, if I have to use a touchpad on my laptop, my effectiveness is like reduced by like 30 to 40%, right? Because I'm having to do a lot of these things that you can do with a mouse and a keyboard together that you now got to do with the touchpad alone. And it just doesn't work out that well that way. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here today is we're going to duplicate this over. I'm going to copy this design. You could import it, but I'm going to go ahead and copy it and drop it onto the standard flag one if it loads up. And I have the wrong flag project open. Yeah, and if you guys aren't using, let me put that together right here. If you're not using filters or labels, I mean, they kind of help me organize stuff. So we've got this published American flag, which is the one that I've shared over to the Easel or the Inventables website under published projects. So if you need an SVG for a flag, you can grab that one. It is centered kind of funky because that's kind of the way I show people how to do it in that other tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and just make a new one, copy this flag over there, and go from there, okay? If you guys do want me to stop or go through anything, go ahead and let me know, okay? I am paying attention to the chat too. Yeah, there's the chat. All right, so I went ahead and copied the flag in here. Let me zoom out again. Copy the flag in here. We need to set up the workpiece size. This particular flag is set up for, I think, a 20 by 11, roughly. So usually I use oversized workpiece. We can go ahead and set this up to 22 by 11.5, which is a 1 by 12, and then 22 inches long. Select all this and edit. Yeah, edit center to material. So that other one where it showed it in the corner, that was kind of using the old method of using the 0, 0 in the center. The new method, you can actually just come over here and select center under the materials section. And that changes the 0 and 0 position to the center. So I'm going to go ahead and take this and reduce the depth. That way it doesn't look so funky over on our preview on the right-hand side. Doesn't really matter until we finish adding the logo. So I'm going to go ahead and add this cicadas to it. For nurses, actually, I've already made this flag. Do you guys have any ideas for something else? I can go and pull another logo real quick if somebody suggests one. I'll either kind of scroll through the Pro Design library and just kind of pick one out, or you can suggest one and I can go and see if I can rip it off of Wikipedia real quick. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's do that. So my preferred method to search up a logo here is to just type in wiki svg and then your desired topic, right? So we can go ahead and look up. So since I already have the nurse one there, we'll look up fire department logo, which you can grab any one of them, right? So the Wikipedia ones here usually end up being a high quality SVG that you can import in and edit really well, right? So a lot of these logos are going to be pretty complex and I don't want to go through fixing them. So let's just grab this City of Seattle one. Unless you guys have an idea real quick. Hopefully it's not lagging too much. I mean, I could use that cicadas one too and show you that one, but we can go through here and do LAPD Shield and possibly pull up that one if there's a good SVG of it. These are PNGs here, right? So if you do this trick, this is a good place to find a lot of, I forgot the LAPD has theirs trademarked, so they'll come after you if you use it. So a lot of their stuff isn't published, but you could do stuff like, I don't know. So we got the Marine Corps Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. And you can see here the .svg is the ending file name here. So we can go to either one of these two and see what it is. See how it starts off with file and .svg. That means we're going to get a pretty decent quality SVG out of it. So this is a multicolor one, some fading. This is going to be a lot of different pieces to deal with. So probably using that one is not the one to go with. So this one here is, again, a multicolor one with all that stuff going on, right? So this one here, there's no gradient colors. So this might be a better one to use. So anyway, we've kind of gone into the weeds about how to search and use Wikipedia and Wikimedia to find high quality SVGs. But, and even this one here, even though it showed up in the images section, as we pull this one up and I click into it, you'll see this down here is where you would download it at, or you can right click on it and do save image as, and we should get a pop-up that says, so it's going to save the image as a PNG. You don't want that. You want to download the original file as an SVG, right? So you can click that blue button there, and it just downloaded the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor as an SVG. And we could bring that one in for this flag, but I think I've gone, well, I don't know if I got over that one before now. Let's go ahead and just bring that one anyway. So now that I've downloaded, we can select SVG here, and it should be under my downloads folder. This Globe and Anchor one. It's 331 different individual pieces. So you can see here, it doesn't really account for the different colorations of it. I'm going to move it off to the side here to be able to easier see it and select stuff without messing up the flag. So a lot of these areas, like if we select this outside one, what I like to do to edit these is to change the depth a bit. So this is one of the pieces that we want to keep. The rest of these other ones, we kind of want to get rid of. So I'm going to cheat here and select. Oh, I remember this SVG. This SVG has an extra piece here, a dot on top of that P that's in the wrong spot. Watch this. See the little dot there? So if you do grab this one from Wikipedia, make sure you fix that P. That little dot doesn't belong there. Let's see if I can do that. See a little dot there bumping out? That's an actual circle that somehow ended up on their SVG in the wrong spot on the Wikipedia page. So if you do take this one, delete that off. All right. So I'm going to go through and select all of these letters real quick and then group them together by using the combine function. And that's just going to make selecting them in the future that much easier. Oops, didn't want that background. We want this one, we want that one, and combine. All right. So really, we just want to get rid of this main black color that's showing there, right? So I think, let me double check. Oh, there's some little pieces here too, right? See these? There's some pieces in here. And again, down in here that were left as that default depth. So making sure to find those before you go deleting everything out, which is what I was really about to do. So by adjusting the depth of this other stuff, it just kind of makes it easier for me to find certain things like this, right? I'm going to take these and just combine them with that perimeter shape. Right now I'm using Shift and clicking and using that control button to help me scroll in and out real quickly and easily. I'm going to combine these together. Oh, yeah. There we go. Yeah, let's do the same thing here with, I think we got all those. Let me just double check there's nothing over here in that part. That's kind of small little pieces. And I don't see any. All right. So here we can select the text that I grouped, that perimeter outside part. And I'm going to combine those together really quick. Right. I wasn't thinking about using this one on the fly, so we'll see how this works. I need to erase this from that, and then that from the background. Yeah, so edit, select by matching depth, set all that to 0 depth. Yeah, I think that's good. Ooh, not send it back. I might have accidentally got rid of those pieces there. Oops. I'm not going to go back and fix them, but you could go back and fix those to get those pieces to come back. So these ones here, we'll set these at 0 depth as well. And then we're going to use the combine function here to get rid of the 0 depth stuff, right? And then we're left with a clean eagle globe and anchor. That's it's going to go from 301 selectable pieces to just one selectable piece here once this combine goes through. And the stream might not be helping things here, but let's see if this works. There we go. So we've gone through and now we have a clean EGA. I did lose those little pieces there on accident because I was kind of rushing through with you guys. But anyway, we've got a clean EGA. So where do you guys want to put it? In the union field or in the stripes? The process is the same either way. Normally I usually put it in the stripes, but if you guys say to put it in the union real quick, we can do that. So kind of the step here is kind of picking the middle. I'm going to cheat and use this bar here, this stripe, and lock it in position. And then I can select the eagle globe and anchor piece, that bar, and the EGA, and then use this align to center. Since I locked that bar, it doesn't move. But had I not locked this bar here, it would be moving around on me. All right. All right. So now that that's in position there, we can, we can create an offset for it. So using the lock feature, we can kind of trick and do a few steps a little bit quicker here, right? So by locking something, it's going to always stay there. Even if I try and use the combine function, it'll make a duplicate of it, and then it will combine stuff. If I make an offset of it, it'll always keep it there, even if I say delete original. So I'm going to select lock object right now for that. And I'm actually going to do the same thing for the rest of this flag to make sure that I don't accidentally delete it. So then I'm going to select the app, my logo there, this app library with the Lego button on the left. And then we're going to go over here to Offsetter. And you can really use either one of these, but Offsetter V2 keeps the new offset centered from the original design. If you select the original one, offset the first offsetter, it moves it down to the bottom left corner when it creates the offset. So it's no longer centered and you got to realign stuff. So Offsetter V2 makes it a little bit easier. The other thing Offsetter V2 does is it honors the setting of your toggle down here. So if you are using millimeters, it's going to allow you to do that. Whereas the original offsetter tool, this original one here, it doesn't. It only works in inches. So if you're a metric user, the V2 will honor your metric selection, and it, like it said, it keeps it centered without moving it to the lower left corner. So I'm going to select Offsetter V2 right now. Let me make sure I lost the chat again real quick. All right. There we go. So with that, we've got this Offsetter V2 here, and we can set what distance outward we kind of want this to this offset to be, right? So again, like I said, it doesn't matter if you check keep original here or not, because I've locked the original in place. It's going to stay no matter what. But if you hadn't locked it in place, that's going to make a difference, right? So it doesn't matter whether this is checked now or not, because I've already locked it. So you can choose how far out from the design you want this offset to be for kind of creating a mask around your logo. So in this case, let's go with quarter inches is okay. We can go. Let's go a little bit bigger, just to kind of set that up. Because maybe you don't love the way. See how this one here, how it had a little. Let me jump back real quick and show you what I saw there. Once this loads up, there we go. I zoomed in too soon. We've got these little pieces that are showing here. You could go through there and manually delete these out, or I'm going to cheat here and just increase the offset a little bit. There we go. So 0.3 is enough to kind of get rid of those. So I'm going to go ahead and import this. And since I've locked all these features in place, the stripes as well as the main EGA design in the back, I can just select all this stuff here and use the combine function again. And it's going to take all these weird little offsets that it made and combine them into one kind of big blob, right? Is that one not? Oh, yeah. So I'm going to deselect these real quick here. the perimeter and stripes. Usually I do this offsetting in a different area off to the side, but I figured I'd try here today, and it's not horrendous, but it's not working out the way I wanted it to, really. So we'll get rid of these stripes and do that combine function. You can go to edit combine, you can right click combine, you can press the hotkeys Control J for this. So once I combine these, I'm going to have this slightly offset silhouette of the Eagle Globe and Anchor, this one here, right? So I'm going to go ahead and change this to a 0 depth cut, and I'm going to make sure it's all the way at 0. So I slid the slider up there, and it didn't hit 0, it hit a little bit off, and that could cause a problem with the next step. So here I'm going to send this to, I'm going to send it back one more, which puts the Eagle Globe and Anchor right on top of it. So these ones here, we can now take these stripes that I had locked, and I'm going to go ahead and unlock them. Oh, wow, that was... Go over here to the shape tool and unlock them. And then I can send them behind, send to the back, behind that, that silhouette. So this is basically how you would then be ready to carve the flag. Now, if you do want to do it in multiple stages like I do, you'll actually need to erase this offset from the stripes. And the way to do that is to select the offset like I have it now, and then holding Shift, select all the stripes. And we're just using the combine feature over again. And that effectively, you can see now, that cut out the perimeter here around that stripes. And that's why I would do the same thing in the star field as well. And then you might find that you end up with like some weird little tiny bits of stars that you might want to just select those individual ones, just delete them out. If they look too small and you think they might look funky when you carve it. But here, so we're basically set to carve this. And now if I was to carve this, I would take it now and then split it up into multiple projects, multiple work pieces, which is what this bottom panel down here is called, right? Work pieces. And then split it up just like I did in my other flag video where I set the stars to their own workpiece. I set the Eagle Globe and Anchor to or the logo, whatever it is, to another workpiece, and that allows me to reset the Z0 by probing that specific region, like right here in the middle of it, of the board. So in case the board wasn't perfectly flat or had moved a little bit as I carved other areas, by reprobing the Z, I get all that much more crisp and clean corners in the logos and all that stuff, right? Crisp, clean corners in the stars. Now, normally I surface the board first, and it's not really going to move too much. But depending on what level of detail you're going for, getting that extra crispiness in there by Z-zeroing it again in that area right above the section you're carving is going to make a difference. You'll see it, and once you do it once, you're going to like the quality enough that you're probably not going to go back to a single Z0 and running the carve in one sequence. Even though it might be a little bit faster because there's one less step to do. But if you're using OpenBuilds, it's really not that long at all. We're talking like a minute to reset the Z0 when you probe, as opposed to Easel where you've got to go through their sequential process to start the next carve. So here for this, I would, now like I said, separate this out into multiple work pieces. We can go through that process here. I've got a bit of time left. Yeah, quite a bit of time actually. So yeah, we'll go through that process here. We're going to go ahead and call this parent design. All right. So that's the one we're not going to mess with, right? And this other one here, we'll call this, rename this one 90-degree stars. So we're going to go ahead and carve this with a 90-degree V-bit, and it's going to be the stars only. And this one here we'll call 90-degree Eagle Globe and Anchor. So EGA. And then this one here I'll rename as 1/8 inch stripes. And then we can do the perimeter cutout. So normally I cut my flags out of an oversized piece of wood, and then I just cut the perimeter itself on the CNC. And then I don't have to worry about making sure that it's the exact right size board, that my stripes don't overset to one side, or that my stars aren't too high at the top and get cut off, and stuff like that. I'm sure if you haven't done it yourself, you've seen pictures of others that have done it. I tend to prefer to learn from seeing the photos of what other people did rather than making those sort of mistakes myself. But trust me, I've thrown a union or two in the trash where I've carved and the stars or my design was the wrong size for the board that I used in my haste, right? So here we've got the 1/8 inch perimeter. And then, so these, I've already set up the names for what I want the carve to do. So here I'm going to do the stars only. And we can add more logos to this. I don't know if you've seen the flag that that I made a while back that has, it's got an equal globe and anchor. It's got the person's rank overlapping the equal globe and anchor. And it's got like a text field down here for their name and their years of service, right? You could put additional logos in different areas just by using that same exact concept of the offset to create a masking, and then using that combine feature to erase the masking from what's behind it to give it this layered approach. And you'll see when I do the stripes here, if I hadn't done that combine feature, the stripes would mess up part of the equal globe and anchor unless I was to also leave the masking in that that one. So for this, like I said, we're doing 9-degree V-bit stars here, so we want to delete everything else out. Oh look, these are locked still, so it won't let me delete them. So we got to make sure to unlock those, and then we can delete that stuff out. You can see here a preview jumped to just the union, and that's a good indication that we don't have any other junk in this area that's like hiding out, right? So this is 9-degree V-bit. So I'm going to choose my favorite one, the Amana RC45711. It's got the carbide inserts. It's a really nice bit, in my opinion. It's for what it costs and what the inserts cost, it's a really nice bit. So we're going to do the same thing over here with the equal globe and anchor. Delete everything else out. Again, I didn't set this to unlock. And then once you get these set up and like you know you're good to go and you don't want to resize it or anything like that, you could come back and like lock everything in place, right? Like now the EGA is locked there as well. We need to select that same Amana bit. And you'll see here, even though it's set to full depth, because the angle of the bit, it's going to basically auto stop itself so it doesn't go too deep. Once it generates the detailed preview, you'll see that. It might take a minute or two to do that. I could pull up Task Manager and show you how much of my PC is being used for the live stream, pulling in HD video from this camera, and a lot of other stuff. But that's one of the reasons why this computer is so slow, and I kind of want to go to that one behind me for streaming pretty soon because it is a lot faster and should not have any of these problems. All right, I'm going to cheat here and move this ever so slightly. Let's see, is it still generating? It is. Interesting. It looks like we're going to get stuck here on generating preview. Sometimes when it does that, you'll notice over here we got the circle where it says we've saved up to date. So we can actually refresh the page if you've got weird stuff like that that won't come back like it should. So here for this one, we are going to need to, let me move this over again, but you guys can see it a little bit better. We're going to need to unlock that object to be able to erase the equal globe and anchor. We need to unlock this object to delete the perimeter. And we need to delete these stars. When I select that, it selects, there we go. Delete the stars out. So now we've got just the stripes. Now, some of these areas of the stripes, the end mill that I'm using can't actually get in there, and that's okay. It's just going to kind of round out some of these super sharp corners. With a logo like this, you're never going to notice that. Now, something like this little bit here, that I think looks funny. So I'm going to delete that out. And you've got a couple options on how you delete that away. But here, we can run this simulation, I think. Yeah, so the thing with wavy flags in Easel is that you can't edit. Chris, that's a good question. The thing with wavy flags in Easel is you can't actually edit the you can't put an SVG on top of it, right? You can't edit the design. So in the last one, in the video last week, I kind of talked about the wavy flag that is shown in the Easel released live stream with Brandon and the other guys from Inventables about where they show the flag that what's his name? I want to say Derek, that he made, and it's a black and it's a subdued flag, right? So it's painted black, and you can see the exposed wood for the white stripes and the white stars. And that video is actually just a wave that he then put an aura mask, cut stencil on, and painted black. So that's kind of that's the easy way to create and paint a flag using Easel currently, because you can't add logos to it, and the way that it carves the depths, you can't have it carve the wave, paint it, and then carve the stripes and carve the stars in. You can't do that the way Easel's currently set up. Well, I say you can't do it. It would take me hours to set it up to be able to trick it to do it, and a lot of other software that could do it easier, like using CarveCo or Vectric or Fusion 360, in order to trick Easel into doing it that way. So really, in a nutshell, you can't do it that way to be able to carve 3D wavy flags with logos and stuff on them that you don't have to go through and manually paint each of the little tiny pieces, which is something that I don't do. That's just as long as it takes to carve a 3D project, I'm not going to be over there painting it. If I can't clear coat it and be done, then it's not worth my time. It just would take way too long to paint the individual elements, painting the stars white, painting the carved in stripes red or white, right? And potentially painting the union itself as well, right? So that's why the easy way to make the wavy flag is to just carve a wave and place a masking over the top and paint through this stencil masking. And you get a nice, it's a good looking quality flag. Yes, if you could carve 3D elements into it, that'd be pretty cool too. But the way Easel's currently set up, you can't. Now, what you could do is carve that wavy flag, come back and use a pocket like we had around this EGA, carve that pocket into the flag itself, and then carve a 3D eagle, globe, and anchor as a separate piece and glue that into the pocket. Or carve the pocket into it and then also carve the EGA down into the bottom of the pocket, where now you've got a flat surface to work with. But as far as putting logos on 3D designs like that within Easel, you'd have to pull up another software like maybe Blender or Fusion 360 or ZBrush to be able to kind of combine different 3D elements together like that, right? So we've got the stripe set up. I think I mentioned that the corners here are going to get rounded out, and this little bit here, I think that looks kind of funky on the flag. So I'm going to get rid of that, but I want to show you something else here. We can check when we've got a pocket set up and an end mill only. We can check uncut areas, and it's going to highlight in red where that size end mill can't get into. So all we do is select this kebab button down here. This button here, which that's called a kebab, in case you didn't know that. The kebab button, and like as if it's a skewer with food on it, right? And then you select uncut areas, and it's going to highlight that stuff in red here. So the problem with that is if you had, so I mean, that's a great feature, but if I was to have, let's say the perimeter, let's do that real quick. That perimeter feature that I had, right? If I make a copy of it and bring it back over here. With that perimeter there, this uncut area no longer works. It has to be pockets only, which I think is kind of silly, and I wish OpenBuilds or Inventables guys would fix so that it would apply this uncut areas to pockets, even if there are other cuts that say like on, inside, or outside of path, because it doesn't work. And now I'm stuck in this endless loop of generating a preview again. So let me refresh the page one more time again. Um, so yeah, you can see here we've got that. If I select uncut areas, it's not gonna. Oh, it is gonna show them today. Oh, it didn't work the other day. As if they changed it. They might have fixed it recently. All right, cool. Anyway, so yeah, we're good there. So you see here in red the areas where the end mill can't fit into. That's pretty neat. Now, if you do select a V-bit, that goes away because the V-bit can get everywhere. Now, you see it auto-selected the smaller end mill there, and that uncut areas kind of got reduced away. See what I'm saying? So that's a neat feature to be aware of, is this uncut area feature, right? And as well, when you simulate and you then want to hide the toolpaths, there's one that pops up here that says toolpaths. So if you accidentally simulated and all the toolpaths are covering your preview, you could check the box to hide toolpaths. Um, yeah. Anyway, we're kind of getting out off topic here, right? So we've got the stripe set up. I do want to get rid of this one little piece here. So there's a few ways to do that. Either you can go over here and use the shape exploder. One of these two apps, I think it's a Shape Exploder one, that separates them into individual pieces. That are then individually selectable, and I can just delete it. Or I'm going to undo twice. Now they're all back where it was, right? Or you can just, since it's one small piece, double click on it and delete out the nodes until that design element is completely wiped away. So now it's gone. So we're good. So we've got the stripes set up to carve. And then our uncut areas doesn't look too bad in there. We've got, like I said, some areas here where it can't get into, but you're not gonna. I mean, that's perfectly fine with most logos, as long as you don't end up with those weird little islands, the little tiny pond or whatever, right, of a carve there. Yeah. So we jump over to the very last one here with the perimeter, and we're gonna go ahead and just delete everything out again, except for the perimeter itself. And since everything else is unlocked now, we have the perimeter. We set this to a full depth cut through. And really, this is the one where I didn't do this ahead of time. I changed the length and width of it, but I didn't update the thickness. Usually I use 3/4 a 1x board here, so that's actually 0.74 is the thickness. And really, this is the one that needs to have that the most. But if you set that on the first one, it would have copied over when you make the duplicates. But now that I only changed it on this one, it doesn't change it on your other work pieces. Does that make sense, you guys? So now we've got this one set up. We need to make sure the tabs are in the right location, which, since I'm using an oversized board here, most of my clamps are going to be on the very edges and not on the top and bottom, because my 1x12 is just barely going to be big enough to sit here, right? So you could use additional double-sided tape below it to help. And now I'm ready to kind of start this carve. How I would find the center point of my board is I do an X from corner to corner. There's no measuring and dividing in half or anything like that. You just measure an X from corner to corner and put a light little X on there with a pencil mark. And I've got the position where I'm going to set the X and Y zeros. And the neat part here is because I'm starting this carve with a V-bit, I'm going to be able to position that V-bit perfectly right onto that crosshairs, right? And then from then on out, I'm just going to continue to select, I'm going to continue to use the prior saved X and Y position and just reprobe for Z every time. And again, that's why I like using OpenBuilds, because it doesn't prompt me to set X and Y again. So I don't accidentally click that button. And it's because of the way I'm doing it, it's actually a lot less buttons to click through, right? So if you are looking at using a different sender, the way to do that too is we come up here and select download the G code for this workpiece, and then do that for the next one, and do that for the next one, and the next one. And since I've named the workpieces, the G code will actually have that name as well. We could properly set this set up as that, and then we can assign the labels. Since it's a flag, we'll select flags. Since it's the Marine Corps one, we can select that as well, right? So you got labels in here, and then you also have the filters within the project itself that you can define here too, right? So we've got labels, and here we've got the filter option, which I think the filter option was what labels were before they were beta, so it might be in a beta testing. You might only be able to see this because I've turned on the beta testing option here under this options tab. So if you are looking for some of these features that sometimes you see on my screen that you don't have, you can come here to options and turn on beta. You can turn it on and off as you see fit. But yeah, it's kind of some unreleased processes and features sometimes that are in there. Anyway, so we're ready to then position it in the center and start this carve, right? Did you guys have any questions about this? If you want, since we're, in a sharing mood here, let's go ahead and select share unlisted. I'm going to copy this link. It auto copies when you click on it. And I'm going to click close, which saves that share setting. So now it's an unlisted project, and I can drop this link in the chat. And you or anybody you want to send that link to can now get a copy of this design. Yeah. I may or may not take that away later, so grab a copy if you want. It's up to you guys. Oh, yeah, so I kind of messed up the EGA by deleting those parts out. So you may or may not want to go through and do this yourself. But, or you could just fix the EGA by pulling that Wikipedia one and kind of going through that step in the beginning and then reposition it using the coordinates here and just drop the fixed one in here that actually has those pieces where they belong. All right. I might just go grab a different one that I've got set up and drop it in here real quick anyway. But yeah, we've gone through and we set all these up and they are good to go. Actually, yeah, that's what I was going to do. Project and download G-code. And you'll see here that it's going to simulate them all out beforehand and then drop those in there. I didn't go through and adjust my cut settings, so that's kind of a problem. But make sure that you guys do that, set up to the bits that you intend to use, and set up your cut settings right before you go saving G-code like I just did. So here, I'm going to refresh this real quick. That way it's not constantly going through this simulating, and we can check what those settings are one last time. I wish there was a cancel button there for simulating and all those other little pop-ups, but since there's not, as long as your project had saved properly, you can just refresh the page. So here we've got the ramping. The ramping, even though it's a default option here, it doesn't actually do anything for a V-bit. So you can leave it on, you can turn it off. I think leaving it on, this is an assumption here, but I believe that leaving it on could make the toolpath calculation think harder. And then as a result, it could take longer to calculate your toolpaths out, right? So here we've got the save settings that I've got for this bit, but you can go through and change these around, change your depth per pass. We'll go with 0.05 inches and a feed rate of, plunge rate of a little bit faster and about 75 inches per minute, depending on what CNC you're running. Obviously, this is going to vary. Don't just use my settings without thinking it through and testing them. All right. And then what are these guys set to? We can ramp these or we can not. The way that I carve this. Oh yeah, I didn't really set the depth the way I like them. So the depth for these stripes, usually I do about a 1 millimeter or 0.04 inches for the stripe depth. Now all the V-bit stuff we want to set to allow it to generate the depth by itself, right? Here, if we look, once that preview generates, if it does, if we end up with a flat bottom pocket, I don't love the way that looks. So I tend to increase the depth and allow it to create a true V down on the bottom, as long as it doesn't bust through the bottom of the stock. Since I didn't adjust the thickness on all these, it might show it busting through the bottom of the stock. So make sure you check your preview and that your settings for materials are right too. All right, you guys. So we can go through here and save all these. Because it's still showing generating, I think that my live stream is screwing up some of the processes here. So I keep on refreshing this and hoping that it works better next time. There we go. There we go. So you can see here the stars, how they end up with the true V shape down at the bottom here, right? And that's going to make it carve faster than if there was a flat bottom in there, because the way that a V-bit does a bunch of step overs down the bottom, which I think I kind of talked about in a different, a couple weeks back, the step over adjustments and that sort of stuff. But anyway, at any rate, we've got the star set up there so we can export these. Oh, and if you guys did want to see some a neat feature that I like doing too, to some of my projects here, which is to use the product preview along with changing your material to get different neat color effects with it, right? So we can select something like this 2-color acrylic, and you can select different colors from, it says custom, but it's not a fully custom color wheel, but you can set up your own custom colors, right? So you get a different looking preview. Now with the 1/8 inch end mill for this, it's not going to look right. I'm better off to just select a V-bit and see what the preview looks like with that. Although it is going to slightly skew the perimeter here and the way that that gets shown in the preview. And I'm not sure if that's going to finish out. I've been having a problem with this the entire stream where it doesn't generate the detail preview properly. So we'll see how that works. I'm going to cheat here and turn off tabs for a moment too. Just for this. Just for showing you guys this real quick. Yeah, it looks like it's stuck generating. So watch, I'm going to reload this and it's going to work really quickly. Keeps on happening every time I change around the different projects. And I know I'm a little click happy sometimes. So sorry about that. Hopefully it generates the detail preview here, and then we can look at the this product preview function, which allows you to take a snapshot of your carve and what it's going to look like. Now, using this multi-step process where I've kind of tricked it into using my bits when I want it to, this product preview doesn't exactly look spot on to how your finished product is going to look, because I can't tell it I'm going to use end mill in those stripes and I'm going to use V-bit somewhere else. Now, I've heard that Easel's working on selectable bit locations like that, where I could, in one project, tell Easel I want to use 3 or 4 different bits, and I want to use this bit for these design elements, like the stripes, then end mill for the stripes, and tell it in the same project, in the same workpiece, that I want to use this bit for the stars and the EGA, the V bit, right? And a different bit for the perimeter, or so like that, right? I've heard that they're working on that, but I haven't seen too much in the development or heard anything for months about that project. So I'm not sure if it got canned or if they're still working on it, but hopefully they are. It'd be pretty neat to have that up. Anyway, I'm going to jump back over here. We've gone through everything else. If I can get this preview to work, you'll see it, but it looks a lot more clean as far as sending a customer a preview before you do the carve, right? To have them approve the design. Hopefully it renders through. All right, so I'm going to jump back over here real quick. Yeah, I guess I could hide. Oh, that was quick. As soon as I jumped away, it here, we'll jump back up there real quick. It finished out. So here you can see that product preview. So you can hide this, hide that. And it does weird stuff with the V-bit around it, but you could adjust the size of this and get it down real tight instead of using the perimeter cut, and have a real nice preview of what your flag would look like. And then you click this camera button down here on the bottom right. And what that does is you get up on my other screen here, you get an image that's saved to wherever you've got your stuff defaulting to, which in my case is just the downloads folder. You've got, it takes a photo of what you see there, cutting away the perimeter for you already, right? So you could do a screenshot here yourself, but what this did is it got rid of the grid. And if you've got full cut throughs with an end mill, you can select those perimeter areas and hide them. So yeah, let me see if I can pull up a different one here. Open. I helped somebody the other day make this honeycomb effect over in the Facebook group, right? So let's pull this up and I'll show you on that one how this works. So here we've got that, and I'm using an end mill to carve a pocket and then the end mill to cut the perimeter, right? So you can come over here and select product preview. It hides the grid pattern around it. It doesn't really matter where this one is at. I can then click on, it says here, click on cutouts to show or hide areas of the material, right? So I'm going to click on this area and it's going to hide that. So now I have just my little tray, the little 3 honeycomb tray that the guy was working on. And now I can take a picture of it. All right. And that's going to save it as an image to that downloads folder and auto open it. So I got a picture of just that bit, right? Pretty neat little effect. And you can go through here and change the material, do a handful of these pictures, and potentially upload this to your Etsy store using the rendered photos of your design. Whether or not you're selling designs or the carve itself, yeah, you could use this for stuff like that as well. Here we've got product preview. And if you click the wrong place, you can click and re-show it. Or you can click this eyeball down here and that shows everything in case you hid too many things or something like that, right? So you get this interesting little product preview. It does not have the correct side wood grain for any of the materials, but the top wood grain looks nice. And with a big enough project, the side wood grain doesn't look too funky, right? Anyway, so that's how you can use product preview. We talked about the flag and saving the different all the different work pieces. This is going to have to run through the simulation real quick as it saves, and then I'll show you what the file name looks like because I set up the because I renamed each of these. It uses the name of the workpiece instead of the name of the project when you save it. So now this is called 9° stars as the file name here. And when I click on it, it should auto open over in OpenBuilds, which it does. And then we see a rendering over here once it loads up of the stars. And again, since we're using the center for our 0, 0 position, it looks a little probably different than what you're used to seeing. But if we think about it, the way that it shows over here in Easel, it's our 0, 0 position is right there. Because we got the 0, 0 coordinate dot, right? So a little bit of these are below it, and everything else is up and to the left. So if we jump over here to OpenBuilds, we've got, oops. You got the stars that show just below that 0 line, some of them, and then, everything else is up and to the left, right? So I talked about, doing the X pattern to find the center, but we also talked about the macro where you could take, identify what the side is of the board and jog over, and it will save the center automatically as the X and Y zeros within OpenBuilds if you set up that macro. Those are just 2 different options for finding center. Anyway, hope that helps, and you guys have a great weekend. Let me know if you guys think that this helped you out at all with learning any new features. All right, and as always, guys, I appreciate each and every one of you hanging out, the inputs that you guys have, helping to kind of direct where this channel's going. So yeah, hopefully we can do. I don't know if you guys jumped in on the giveaway for St. Patrick's Day with that 3018 CNC, but I hope to be able to do a few more of those pretty soon. I've got my own bit collection growing that hopefully I'll be able to work with some other vendors to get some more stuff to give away. But if nothing else, we'll be doing some bits to those of you that that are around here often, that are hanging out in the lives and being active and that sort of stuff. Anyway, thank you guys for hanging out again. Take care. Have a great weekend. See you guys next time, next Friday here at 12:30 the same time. All right? Take care, you guys.